I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and next to me is a 2020 Toyota Corolla. Now, this is the 12th generation in a long line of cars that pretty much could be considered appliances. Now, that appliance tag sold thousands of these cars, hundreds of thousands. This is absolutely the best-selling car in Australia between 2010 and 2018. Yet, when the new model came along, which in my opinion looks much better, it's angular, it's expressive, it's Japanese, the sales figures somewhat dropped off, went from the top spot in 2017, vying with dual cabs and the like, to now sitting in 6th place. So why is that? I'm not sure. Tom went and drove this car originally when it was released in 2018 on its Australian launch, and he reported back great things to me, saying it was a fun Corolla. And I'll be honest, I didn't quite believe him. So what we're going to do today is take a poke around this Peacock Black ZR range topping example. We're going to check out the interior, front seat, back seat, then we're going to check out how practical it is, checking out the boot before taking it out for a spin to see if it really is an improved Corolla. So, first of all, let's check out the cabin. So to the interior of the Toyota Corolla. Now, it's a pleasant surprise. It's a lot more quality than any other Corolla I've ever been in. Everything feels well screwed together. There's plenty of soft touch plastics up on the top of the dashboard here and around the passenger area. You've got a nice leather wrapped steering wheel with cruise control buttons and plenty of functionality on here, which is great to see. You've got your infotainment system, touchscreen, color display. It's pretty decent, nice and responsive. You've got some shortcut buttons. You've got your volume knob as well, which is pleasant, so you don't have to go through menus to adjust the volume. And you've got your wireless charging here as well, which is great. The only problem with that is I quite often, when putting my phone there, will bump the seat heaters on, which can be a little bit annoying. The only other thing I find annoying in the front seat is the door bin here. It's a little bit too tight to fit a bottle like this that's just a little bit too tall, so it's not that usable. You feel like you're going to break stuff when you're jamming stuff in there. But that does bring us onto the seats, which are fantastic. They're Alcantara centered in this ZR model. They're sporty, they're kind of like a tombstone design, and they're really comfortable to sit in for a long period of time, plus they hold you in. The general driving position as well is decent, commanding. You sit nice and low. I've got decent headroom here in the driver's seat. Unfortunately, the passenger seat, because it's not electrically adjustable, doesn't have any height adjustment, so passengers will be a little bit tight there. But let's hop into the back seat and see what the Corolla is like for rear passengers. Now, in the rear of the Corolla, it's a little bit cramped. You feel a little bit sort of hemmed in by the big bucket seats in the front, but it's actually not a bad place to be. I am 6'2", so I'm at the upper end of most people you'd see in a back seat. There's a little bit more headroom, so you could be a touch taller and it would be fine. The actual bench is decent, but the under-thigh support isn't really there for me. Behind my own driving position, which is a bit unfair, I've got decent toe room, but my knee room is a little bit compromised. As for amenities back here, unlike the CHR, which you can check our full video review by clicking up in the top right-hand corner of the video, this Corolla actually has an armrest and vents in the back. So for the same price in a Corolla, you get a fair bit more stuff back here. You've obviously got your door bins as well, and the windows go all the way down, which is nice. So overall, it's not too bad a place to spend time, but it's not really a place you'd want to be for a long road trip or something like that. Now, let's hop around to the rear end of this car and check out the boot really quickly. Now, we come around to the rear of the Corolla hatchback. I think a couple of highlights back here. It looks great. It looks angular again. It mirrors the front nicely. It doesn't look like two different people have designed the car. I like the sort of quite streamlined rear taillights as well. I think it's a very holistic kind of Toyota design. Little lip spoiler here as well. It looks great. Now, onto the not so good stuff, the boot space. We've talked about this before in our previous review of the Toyota Corolla. It's tiny. 217 litres in this ZR model is pretty hilariously small. And you can see that when I put this tiny little backpack in there, it actually takes up quite a lot of space. Funnily enough, a Porsche Cayman actually has more boot space than this car. But that might not be a big deal to you, because you might not need to carry loads of stuff. You may not need to carry loads of boxes. The only time I can think of it where, for me, it would really come into being an issue is if I had to do airport pickups, had 4 people in the car and their luggage. I just couldn't do it in this. So if that's something you've got to do regularly, then definitely double think about that. But honestly, for day-to-day stuff and the amount of shopping I do, it's not a big deal. So let's get back on to the positives of this car and take it out for a spin. Okay, so let's talk about what the 12th generation Toyota Corolla is like out on the road. Now, first things first, the cabin, as I mentioned in the interior section, is a lovely place to be in, great view out, and it's pretty well suppressed road noise as well. There's nothing really bad until you hit coarse chip at sort of high speeds, and then there's a little bit of roar, but I mean, that's to be expected. We've got some pretty grippy Dunlop Sport Max RT rubber on here in an 18-inch size, so there's not much space for that that road noise to hide. So to give this thing credit where credit's due, it does a pretty good job in those scenarios. Now, the steering on this thing is pretty enjoyable as well, nice and light around the city, and it actually has a really good ratio. It feels natural, it doesn't feel overly twitchy or overly slow. It's something I got used to pretty quickly. There's no real feel, obviously, it's an electric system, but you can trust the car through it, and it feels like a confident system to use. On the steering wheel itself, there's a whole bunch of controls as well, as to be expected these days. You've got everything to control this slightly ghastly looking digital center display here on the left, and the volume knob, and you've got your voice control. Voice control I actually quite like in this car. I think it works quite well as long as you figure out what to say, because you do need to add an extra step. Little demonstration of the voice commands. Here we go. Find a POI.
Say a POI.
Caltex.
Showing a list of Caltex nearby.
She's got us.
Say an item number from the list.
1.
Is this correct?
Yes. We got it. Nice. On the right hand side, you've got your cruise control as well. Thankfully, it's not on the stubby nub. It is a radar system, which is a good thing and a bad thing depending on who you are. Personally, I didn't end up using it that much. Similar story with the lane trace assist, but the Toyota one is definitely one of the lesser ones out there on the market. Hyundai system works much better. Now, in this model, you get a pretty cool head-up display as well that tells you your speed, your direction, can give you nav directions, tells you what song's on, and there's a speed sign detection as well, so it can tell what the speed limit is saying. The only problem with that is that it doesn't work as well as a lot of the other brands, so it gets very confused sometimes. It'll pick up school zones, it'll pick up truck and bus low speed limits, so you can't rely on that entirely. Sometimes it is nice to have, but personally I think it's a little bit of a gimmick. Now, the rest of the safety features on this car are pretty excellent. You've got high and low speed AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection, all the standard stuff. You've got a reversing camera across the range as well, blind spot monitoring, and you've got rear cross traffic alert, which I found quite invaluable when reversing out of car parks. That's a great thing to have. Now, the 12th generation of Corolla also brought along with it this engine that we have in this car, which is a M20A. It's a 2-litre, 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated engine, and it feels like very much a Toyota engine. It's decent. It's got good enough outputs of 125 kilowatts and 200 newton meters, but it doesn't have that shove that you get from some of the turbo cars like you get in a Golf or the European counterparts or the Hyundai, the 1.6 turbo. It does feel a little bit anemic sometimes. Up to 80 k's an hour, it's fine, but above that, it in combination with the CVT, the dull throttle response isn't exactly pleasant to use. But it's supposed to return reasonable fuel economy. We've got 9.3 litres per 100. The claimed economy on this car is about 7 litres, 7.5 combined. So it's a little thirstier than a lot of other cars. But on the highway, we were seeing as low as 6. The CVT is fine if you don't mind CVTs. Personally, I find it to be a little bit annoying. I do wish I had a 6-speed manual or a traditional torque converter or automatic, but it does its fuel economy stuff, and you've got your manual paddles back here, so you can put it into manual mode and kind of lock it into a ratio, and you get your gear changes like you would expect in an automatic. Well, yeah, it's fine. Now, the good stuff about this car is the chassis. So the actual ride comfort is firm, but it's not uncomfortable, and it's never uncomfortable. It's never crashy, except maybe the most slight initial from the 18-inch wheels, but they give great traction, so I can sort of overlook that. But the actual body control is very, very good in this car, and it gives you adjustability mid-corner as well, which can't be said for a lot of old Corollas and still sort of can't be said for a lot of its competitors. You get the ability to sort of dial in as much sort of understeer or oversteer as you want. Lifting off the throttle gives it quite a lot of angle sometimes, so it can be quite enjoyable on a back road or just whipping around the city. And thankfully it never falls into that horrible terminal understeer that you used to be sort of familiar with Corolla hire cars. So they really turned it around for this gen, and I must say I was impressed, and I actually had a bit of a smile on my face on the drive, which I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting. Although Tom did prepare me for that, and I didn't believe him, so I guess it's my own fault. So it does everything a Corolla needs to do. It fades into obscurity, into the background when you've got people in the car. You can have a chat, you can listen to your music, you can do whatever you want, and it'll pretty much take care of everything with the safety features that are equipped. But when you want to have some fun on a back road, it does even allow you to do that. So Toyota ticked all the boxes it needed to with the Corolla. I don't have any huge gripes apart from really the CVT, but I mean, that's to be expected in this generation from a Toyota. So really it's a decent car to drive around and quite enjoyable. Now let's get back to the car park, and I'll talk you through my final thoughts on the 12th gen Corolla. So that brings us to the end of our time with the 2020 Toyota Corolla, and it does everything a Corolla needs to do. It ticks those boxes. It blends into the background when you're driving it like a ubiquitous piece of transport should. It's comfortable, it's safe, and it's going to be reliable. It goes above and beyond that too. It's got really comfy seats, and it's got excellent set of driving dynamics. The only couple of gripes are obviously with the 2-litre engine, which is a little perhaps thirstier than some of its rivals without having some of the punch. Personally, I would go for the 1.8-litre hybrid, especially if you're going to be driving it in the city, because the 2-litre doesn't offer that much more punch, certainly from the driver's seat, and it sort of eats into the fuel economy a bit. So my opinion is go for the hybrid. The other problem being the rather compact boot space, but that's solved with the sedan that they now have. Interestingly, on that topic, the hybrid actually has a larger boot space because it doesn't have a spare tyre, so that raises the boot space to about 320 litres from the 208 here. Now, as to why the Corolla isn't selling as well as it should, I think that's down to just market trends. I mean, dual cabs have taken off unprecedentedly in Australia. You've got the small SUV phenomenon as well that is sort of cannibalizing sales of the Corolla. So think of the CHR. You can watch our full-length video review up in the top right-hand corner of this video of that. But what remains is that the Corolla does everything it needs to do and a little bit more. And I quite like it. But let me know what you think of it in the comment section down below. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're subscribed to Chasing Cars and hit that bell icon so you never miss another full-length Australian video car review. I'm John Law. As always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.